All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening for the Why Menthol, Why Now San Diego information session. My name is Nicole Turkson, and I am the project coordinator with the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council, and I'll be one of your MCs for this evening.
And hello, everybody. I'm Tony Young. I am working on this project that is so important to San Diego. I'm part of the team, and I'm looking forward to hearing a lot of the ideas from our panelists and also from you.
Thank you, Tony. So the purpose of this event is to educate the San Diego community, particularly the Black community, about the menthol, about the social justice and public health issue behind menthol. So we also want to underscore the importance and the relevance of this topic as the COVID-19 pandemic continues. So, although we have vaccination rates going up and, our state is experiencing a reduced rate of infections compared to other states, the fact is that we're not out of the woods yet. We are still in this pandemic, and flavored tobacco products, especially mentholated ones like Kools and Newports, put those who use them at a higher risk of severe COVID-19 infection. So we have an interesting and thought-provoking program in store for you all tonight. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Pastor Keith Brown of Bayview Baptist Church here in San Diego to begin our evening with a blessing.
All right, let's pray. Father, we come in your name saying thank you for this day, Lord. We thank you for this time that we'll spend together. Lord, we just thank you for the opportunity to come together as an organization, as a panel, as a people, Father, to share information that can be, that can restore hope in our community. Lord, that can restore some help that we need to understand the effects of these products, Lord, and not only that we can restore our health, because we realize that the bodies are temples and Lord, we ought to take care of them. So Lord, we thank you in advance for the information that we'll hear, the knowledge and wisdom that we'll gain from all of those who are participating. Lord, we just thank you for those who've tuned in to hear. I pray, oh God, that you let the information fall on ears of hope and ears of excited expectation, looking for ways to protect our community. Father, thank you again for the organization. Thank you for all of those who are participating, and thank you in advance for what you're going to say and that what we're going to hear. It's in Jesus' name we pray and ask it all. Thank God, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Brown. And we appreciate those words. And I think that's always a good place and good time to start a discussion like this, because it does affect so many people's lives. I would tell you that as a legislator, a former legislator, how of the community to be a part of the legislative process. And we are so fortunate to have an individual who is not only representing our 79th Assembly District, that's the district that I live in, who is very thoughtful and very smart on issues in regards to all types of policy. But on top of that, she is a medical doctor, and she brings a certain gravitas and a certain strong voice to many important discussions, including this one. And it's my pleasure, and I'm just very excited and proud to have Dr. Akilah Weber, the Assembly member from the 79th Assembly District, to greet us and say a few words.
Well, good evening, everyone. As stated, my name is Dr. Akilah Weber, and I bring you greetings from the 79th Assembly District. I represent parts of all of La Mesa, Lemon Grove, and Bonita. Thank you so much for that very warm introduction, Mr. Young, and thank you to Pastor Brown for your thoughtful words and blessings on this event. And a very, very, very special thank you to the San Diego versus Big Tobacco and the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Coalition for organizing this meaningful conversation about the fight to keep San Diego and our African American communities safe from the dangers of tobacco and menthol. By now, we should all know that smoking is bad for our health and particularly for the health of African Americans. We are still being disproportionately impacted from the years of predatory targeting by the big tobacco corporations on our communities. The Center for Disease Control, or the CDC, as many people say, note that although we as African Americans usually smoke fewer cigarettes and we start at an older age, it is a major factor in the 3 leading causes of African American deaths. And our children are more likely to be exposed to secondhand smoke, leading them to have various lung diseases like asthma, increased risk of developing COPD, and other respiratory illnesses later on in life. And menthol is even worse, because menthol masks the harsh taste of tobacco and it's more addictive. So essentially, it makes it easier to smoke, but harder to quit. And unfortunately, over 80% of African American smokers prefer menthol. We are the highest rate of menthol cigarette users compared to other racial and ethnic groups. And almost half of African American smokers would stop smoking if menthol was banned. And this is why the big tobacco companies have worked so hard to keep menthol flavored cigarettes on the market, even when other flavors were banned in 2009 with the Federal Tobacco Control Act. If that ban had included menthol, 320,000 deaths would be averted by 2050. A third of those deaths would be African American lives, despite us only being about 12% of the entire population in the United States. Banning menthol products improves our public health and changes our environment in powerful ways. If this change drastically improves the leading causes of our preventable deaths in the US and improves every member of our communities should get involved. I look forward to this panel discussion tonight to continue to educate our communities on the harmful effects of tobacco and menthol. Again, thank you so very much for having me to address this very important topic, which is very near and dear to my heart. I hope that everyone here gains the knowledge from all of these esteemed panelists, that you share it amongst your friends and family, and that we can all continue to work together to improve the health outcomes for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weber. That was just a wonderful way to begin our program. We see and appreciate the powerful work that you're doing to advocate for our vulnerable communities, especially the African American community, on the issue of menthol tobacco. And we just wholeheartedly appreciate these efforts. Thank you again for making time to join us this evening. So before we move on with our presentations, we'd like to review a few housekeeping items. First, we are sharing a participant information packet in the chat, which will include more details on the menthol and flavored tobacco campaign here in San Diego, along with additional resources and opportunities, including local COVID-19 testing and vaccination sites. Additionally, the chat feature has been enabled for you to communicate with the panelists. However, we encourage you to use the Q&A feature to ask questions you may have for our presenters or our panelists as the program progresses. So next on our agenda, I would like to introduce our first presenter, Dr. Philip Gardner. Dr. Gardner is a public health advocate, activist, administrator, and evaluator. He is recently retired from the Tobacco-Related Disease Research Program, University of California, Office of the President, and will be giving us more insight about why menthol in particular is dangerous to allow in our communities. Dr. Gardner.
So thank you, Nicole. Let me just thank Akilah for giving our opening. Thank Pastor Brown for the blessing. And thank you all for being here. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to kind of give you the backstory of what Akilah mentioned about the predatory marketing of menthol in the Black community. This is not a minor matter, unfortunately. It's the main cause of death in the Black community is from cigarette smoking. And the main vector of that, I'm going to go into in a little bit more detail. I hope people can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, let me see if I can do it larger. Can you see it, still see it?
Yes, we do.
Okay, as Nicole mentioned, I'm one of the co-chairs of the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council and recently retired from the University of California. My title of talk is Why Menthol, Why Now? And we're going to try and explain that today. And frankly, the bottom line is enough is enough. This is a recently published study of why we have to remove menthol from the marketplace. New research shows that between 1980 and 2018, menthol cigarettes were responsible for 150 million new smokers, 150,000 smoking-related premature deaths, and 1.5 million years life loss among African Americans. As pointed out earlier, African Americans only constitute 12% of the population, but they represent during this time period 15% of all new smokers, 41% of smoking-related premature deaths, and 50% of the total menthol-related harm. If we take anything away from this presentation this evening, take this slide away. The question is, why menthol, why now? This is why menthol, this is why now. We should bring this framework to kind of get a sense of where we are, and these are the two topics that we're going to be talking about tonight. Menthol cigarettes and flavored little cigars have been and are the main vectors of death and disease in the Black, brown, and other poor communities of color. The COVID-19 pandemic has just thrown a spotlight on the health disparities and unequal treatment that poor colored communities have faced for hundreds of years in the United States. At this time, nothing could be more helpful in saving Black lives and showing that Black lives matter than getting menthol cigarettes and flavored little cigars straight out of the Black community. I'm going to give the backstory here, what Akilah Weber had put forward, and I'm going to talk to you about what's become known as the African Americanization of menthol cigarettes. 60 years of predatory marketing and counting. Think about after World War II, Blacks are moving to the West Coast and moving north. They're moving into segregated situations. Companies are figuring out different foodstuffs for them, different hair products for them. And in our case, they're figuring out different smokes for different folks. Series of focus groups are held in the late 1950s, early 1960s by Brown and Williamson, the maker of Kool at that time, and found that messages, television ads resonated much more with African American smokers than they did with white smokers. So they poured 91% of their entire advertising budget into television. They began to use male actors with more Black features. They tripled their advertising in ebony. They began to use our idiom. Menthol's got a brand new bag, a la James Brown. Cool jazz, we know about the Cool Jazz Festival. And then probably most problematic is the philanthropy. The tobacco industry began to give money to all civil rights groups, all cultural groups, HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities, social clubs. They infiltrated our community. Here's another slide that you don't want to lose sight of. This is what has happened. This is the assault. This is why menthol, why now? In 1952 and 1953, only 5% of African Americans smoked menthol cigarettes. By 1968, that had almost tripled. By 1976, it had tripled again. By the mid-2000s, it was up to 82%, and that today, 85% of African American adults and 94% of African-American youth that smoke use menthol cigarettes. This is an ad for menthol cigarettes in 1958. This is Salem. This is a white couple in a meadow, refreshes your taste. This is the way it used to be presented. But by 1963, you have Elston Howard, catcher for the New York Yankees, telling you to come up to cool. 1963 is the March on Washington. 1963 is the Birmingham bombing of the church. There's the civil rights movement is in full gear. Jim Crow hasn't gone anywhere, but the tobacco industry is ahead of the curve. They are positioning themselves to take over the black market, which they essentially end up doing. By the late 60s to early 70s, we have the brother here with dashiki, beads, afro, a whole new bag. Again, the James 1970s, we have Newport, Alive with Pleasure. After all, if smoking isn't a pleasure, why bother? Of course, there's a brother in a suit and a tie playing basketball. Of course, black folks like basketball, whether they're dressed for it or not. By the late 1970s, everybody's in the game. Winston's in the game. It's real, it's rich, and it's cool. The 1980s, we began to see the Menthol Wars. This excellent article by my colleague, Dr. Valerie Yerger, Racialized Geography. The tobacco industry sent sampling bans throughout the Black community around the country. They knew the high traffic areas, they knew the parks, the known street corners, the daily routes. I tell the story each time. In 1979 and 1980, I was living in New York City, and I lived in Brooklyn and worked in Harlem, and came up out the subway one day on my way to work on 125th Street, and there was one of these vans blaring our music and giving away packs of menthol cigarettes. Of course, I was a menthol cigarette smoker then. I was happy to see it, and the tobacco industry knew it. By the early 90s, they're still doing it. Here's our idiom again, fire it up. They knew exactly what Black folks were doing and how they were doing. And I just want to note something here. It's Newport pleasure. If we back up, remember it's Alive with Pleasure. Here it's Newport pleasure. They dropped Alive because focus groups began to tell them that you can't be using Alive with tobacco because people know that cigarettes are killing you by this time. So we have to invent other ways to do it. By the early 2000s, they're still pushing this stuff on us. It's enticing, and using the term enticing, you can see the lady in the background, the outline of her, see what they're selling. By 2004, again, if we remember in the 60s was dashikis, remember then it was also the jazz festivals. Now it's a cool mix. Now it's the DJ battle in 2004. Every decade they pick up what African Americans were doing culturally and exploited it. This was be coast to coast, head to head DJ battle. You think they're aimed at a certain community? The nationwide contest was to culminate in Chicago. Local opposition by African American groups grew until the point that attorney generals in New York, Massachusetts, and Illinois blocked the national meeting in Chicago. Keep in mind, by 2004, is 6 years after the Master Settlement Agreement of 1998, and you weren't supposed to be doing things like this anymore. But notice this, in 2003 and 2004, leading up to the Cool Mix campaign, each image that you see on the screen is a pack of cigarettes. This is what they're doing. This is what they've been doing. So let's step back a minute and talk about what is menthol and what it does. Akilah mentioned some of it. I'm going to dive just a little more into it. I would suggest to you that menthol is the ultimate candy flavoring. It helps the poison to go down easier. Menthol is an anesthetic by definition. Not only does it mask the harshness of smoking, it actually has cooling sensation, a numbing sensation, and it allows deeper inhalation. Now, while it's true, your bronchi mimics bronchial dilation. Your bronchi don't get any wider, but it sends a message to the brain that, oh, since it tastes it's cool and numbing, I can pull in harder. The deeper you inhale, the more toxins and nicotine you take in. The more toxins and nicotine you take in, the more addicted you become. The more addicted you become, the harder it is to quit. That's what menthol is all about. That's why they put it in the cigarettes in the first place. Mentholated cigarette smoking inhibits nicotine metabolism. Means when nicotine gets to your liver, it breaks into cotinine. But if you're smoking menthol with it, menthol slows down the metabolism of cotinine in your liver, stays in your body longer. People who disproportionately smoke menthol cigarettes, African American, have more menthol, nicotine stay in their body. I'm going to show you another way that happens too. Big words here: independent sensory activation of neurotransmitters. Short story there is, if you smoke menthol cigarettes, you get more what we call nicotine receptors in the brain. The more nicotine receptors you get in the brain, you want to feed them more. The more addicted you become. That's why it becomes harder to quit. Increases salivary flow and transbuccal drug absorption. Again, some big words that said in English: if you chew tobacco that has menthol in it, it crosses the gum barrier much more effectively. And probably most disturbing is all, menthol has greater cell permeability, meaning if you smoke cigarettes that have menthol in it, the menthol allows the smoke to penetrate the cell wall much more efficiently than if it didn't have menthol in it. This is why they put it in the product in the first place. Let's talk a little bit. I see I've lost a slide or two, but maybe that's probably a good thing. I'm going to talk about the predatory marketing of this product. I should also just mention before I go on that menthol products are harder to quit. And a slide that didn't make it in here is that melanin retains nicotine, meaning the darker your skin, the more nicotine is contained in your melanin cells. So it stays in your cells longer, it stays in your body longer, it stays in your liver longer, it penetrates cell walls longer. It's a setup. It's a setup. So let's talk about the predation, or the act of attacking or plundering, where a predator, the tobacco industry, feeds on its prey, the African American community, and other marginalized group. Here's a great slide. This is from LaTanisha Wright. I was telling you about the Cool Mix campaign in 2004. LaTanisha Wright was part of the Cool Mix campaign, a Black woman, and was so infuriated by it that she left the tobacco industry, brought documents with her, and this is one of the documents she brought with her. This is the tobacco industry's line. There are focus communities and non-focus communities. These are their words. Focus communities are inner city, colored, and poor. Non-focus communities are upscale, suburban, rural, and white. Things are more expensive in the non-focus communities, and unfortunately, they're cheaper in the menthol communities. I'm going to show you some examples of that. Predatory marketing patterns. It's a great study out of Stanford University by Dr. Lisa Henriksen, colleague of mine. The punchline here is the dose-response relationship. As the percentage of African American students increased, the portion of menthol ads increased. What they did is they looked at the census tracts around schools, and where there are a greater amount of African Americans, there were more advertisements for menthol cigarettes. What's great about, I've been a scientist for a while, what's great about science, so you can't refute this, this is what actually they do and how they penetrate our community. As enrollment went up, the proportion of menthol ads increased proportionally. That was California. This is Massachusetts. Storefront cigarette advertising difference by racial and ethnic community. Brookline, predominantly upscale community. Dorchester, essentially a poor Black community. It's more diverse now, but essentially that's its history. And of course, this was done some 10 years ago. Punchline here. There were more retail ads in Dorchester. The ads were larger in Dorchester. The menthol ads were significantly greater in Dorchester. And I guess what pisses me off the most, the price of cigarette in Dorchester was 50 cents cheaper. They make it cheaper for Black folks to die. Menthol, a sacrificial lamb. It's one of my favorite favorite slides because it looks so innocuous, but that's what they've been doing with us. I would suggest to you that in 2009, when the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act was proposed in 2008 and signed in 2009, essentially was a deal with the devil. Philip Morris, Southern senators, and unfortunately some representatives of the tobacco control movement, and frankly some other representatives of the Black community, got together and said, okay, we can eliminate 13 flavors in cigarettes, but we're going to exempt menthol. By exempting menthol, they essentially threw African Americans, women, youth, Native Hawaiians, Filipinos, folks from the LGBTQ community, Puerto Ricanos, folks with behavioral health issues, homeless folks, threw them all under the bus. Just like Akilah said at the end, if we'd have stopped in 2009, we'd have saved hundreds of thousands of lives, particularly hundreds of thousands of Black folks. And I'll show you that data at the very end. The fight to ban menthol takes off. Many of us go back to testify at the Tobacco Products Scientific Advisory Committee in 2010 and 2011. Numerous scientific journals are published on the harms of menthol. And finally, the TPSAC report, the Tobacco Products Scientific Advisory Committee, comes out in 2011. Quote, the removal of menthol products from the marketplace would be beneficial to the public's health, unquote. They've known this for 10 years. Of course, the Office on Management and Budget sat on this report until early 2013, which is a whole nother discussion. But this was known then. In 2013, a citizens petition was developed by the Public Health Law Center that got everybody, not everybody, but the leading tobacco control groups in the country to sign on that essentially said, it's been 18 months, FDA, since you said removal from the marketplace would benefit the public's health. Why haven't you removed it? It wasn't until 2020, after we sued them, I'll talk about that in a second, that they decided to respond to the petition. Petition was filed in 2013. They responded to it this year. In June of 2020, the FDA was sued by my group, the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council, Action on Smoking and Health, the American Medical Association, and the National Medical Association. Punchline being is that the FDA has dragged their feet and they need to come to make a determination on menthol, which they've been putting off now for 12 years. FDA finally acted on April 29th, and I think this is very important to point out that they began the rulemaking process. Menthol wasn't banned in April of this year. Unfortunately, when we deal with the tobacco industry, sometimes, or the FDA in this case, there's the good, but the bad and the ugly is still to come. Starting the rulemaking process is good. FDA admits that menthol should be removed from the marketplace. They included a rule around making of flavored cigars, which we know our folks smoke disproportionately. And they mentioned in their 16-page announcement that the importance of cessation, and I can't stress this more, the importance of actually having resources available to Black folks and other folks who are trying to quit cigarettes. It can't be just, oh, we're going to ban them and throw all these folks out on the street. There needs to be culturally specific, language specific stuff that's available. So that was the good thing. The bad, the rule itself will not be proclamated until next year in April. There's no rule right now. That was on the 29th of April of this year was the announcement that we're going to make a rule that won't be made public until April of 2022. Once it's made public, what will happen will be a 60-day comment period, which the tobacco industry historically has increased to 90 days, sometimes to 120 days. And when they opened up a process to eliminate menthol in 2017, over 400,000 comments were put in by the tobacco industry. I'm not exaggerating. That's a whole presentation itself, what the tobacco industry has done over these last 12 years to keep menthol on the marketplace. After that, those 400,000 things have to be answered. It then gets kicked upstairs to the Office on Management and Budget. Office on Management and Budget will look at it, and that may take a number of other months. Then it's sent back down to the FDA. The FDA then will put out a final rule. And this is where the ugly comes in. The tobacco industry will sue to block the implementation of it. And it'll probably sue more than once and probably more than one venue. Let's don't believe the hype. People are running around saying if you end the sale of menthol, you're going to be racist toward Black people. Well, my presentation just, you're standing history on its head. We're not taking away a Black cigarette. We're trying to save Black lives. And you're going to hear this as we go out in San Diego about how these are Black people's cigarettes. No, it's the tobacco industry cigarettes. It's Black people's lives that they're taking. They say it's going to criminalize Black people and that police are going to have more interaction with them. Well, no, the ordinance that's being talked about in San Diego and that has been passed around the country are about retailers. It says nothing about possession. We've had police chiefs in different cities stand with us and say that this isn't about arresting people. This is about retail stores, not about individuals. And then the rise of illicit market. You notice I didn't use that blank market. I used illicit market. This has been ended in a number of cities around the country and in Canada and in other places around the globe. There has been no Black market, no illicit market that has come up. I'm getting there, I'm getting there. So I'm going to suggest to you that the fight must continue. We can't wait on the state or the FDA. Lives are at stake. We must continue to fight for local and state bans on menthol. It's been 12 years since the passage of the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act of 2009. The original sin, if hundreds of thousands of Black lives would be saved, they didn't have to die. That's why this presentation is titled, Enough is Enough. I think the take-home message is that menthol is a social justice issue, that disproportionate marketing and targeting of candy-flavored poison to African Americans and other specially oppressed sectors of society is outright discriminatory and genocidal. The poorest, folks that are least informed, folks with the fewest resources, indeed the definition of preying on the most vulnerable sections of our society. If menthol cigarettes were banned, hundreds of thousands of lives would be saved. If only 30% stopped smoking, over 500,000 people would be saved. Over 250,000 of them would be Black. What's at stake? What's at fight? It's for our children. It's for the future. Here's a brother with his hat on backwards, baggy pants, on a skateboard, and surrounded by tobacco imagery. With that, I come to a close. I would suggest to you, why menthol, why now? It's enough. It's the main killer of Black folks. And thank you for letting me run over just a few minutes. I'll stop here. And hopefully when we get to it, we'll be able to talk more about it. Look, thank you, folks. I'll stop my share.
Well, thank you, Dr. Gardner. That was a wonderful presentation. And really, that's the type of information that we need to use as we try to change, city, county, statewide ordinances and laws so that our people can be protected. But you got to have that true research and information to do that. So obviously, you're the person that can help us as we move forward in changing things and with that type of information. With that, I'm just very happy to introduce to you Pastor Keith Brown. He's the executive pastor at Bayview Baptist Church. He has done a number of things in the community, especially in this space. And obviously, Bayview, those of you who might not know, is the largest African-American church in San Diego, and is right in the middle of the community where these tobacco companies are targeting. And his insight on issues related to not only the impact of menthol, but more so the work related to COVID that Bayview has done is really important to this, because there is an interconnection here. So Pastor Brown, thank you for joining us. Could you say a few words for us and kind of give us some insight on what's going on out there. Okay, and you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. Thank you
go.
so much. It's a pleasure to be able to share. Let me just say personally, from a personal standpoint, what tobacco has done to my family and why this is an important issue for me. First of all, my mother died of lung cancer because she smoked starting at about 18 years old and smoked for 40 years. Her father died from lung cancer from smoking for over 40 years. He had a brother that died of lung cancer for smoking for over 40 years. My brother that's under me, he died at 50 years old from smoking because he had cancer. And so it's hit home for me on a personal level. So that's why I would have an interest in us having information out there, sharing with our people just what this predatory marketing is doing. And then because we are, working with people getting vaccinations and also tested, when you start looking at, our people are disproportionately affected, in my opinion, with pre-existing conditions. And so some of that is because they've smoked, some of it is other health issues, but we're finding that in our community that people are not well. And so, that puts them at more risk when it comes to getting COVID. And so we're out there in that fight to encourage them to get vaccinated as well. So that's my personal thing. And certainly we have to fight it. Again, I'm on board with this, and we're still in that fight, try to encourage people to stay healthy. And certainly they need to stop marketing our area with those cigarettes.
Pastor, you're doing some work with COVID testing and vaccinations at the church. I got my first vaccination there. How's that going? And obviously that's going to help us when it comes to the fight of this menthol dilemma and problem that we have.
Yeah, we are. It's still a struggle. They're having the vaccines at the church to make the vaccines available to the community that they feel is difficult to get to. Thank God we've had some people we've had discussions with that are getting the vaccines because it's at a trusted place. It's at the church. And so even though we're not doing large numbers every day, we are still getting people vaccinated. And I had to look at this a different way, because I wanted, hundreds of people to come every day, and that's not happening. Some days it's only 10 or 20. But what I have to look at is every person we get vaccinated, that helps them save some other lives. And so it had to change my perspective. And then every person that gets vaccinated, when they have a good experience, then that might help them encourage someone else who have been hesitant to get vaccinated to get vaccinated. So it's still a push, it's still a struggle, but we're in the fight and we are making some progress, and thank God for that.
Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you so much, Pastor Brown.
Okay, any other questions on that?
I think we can definitely save our questions for our panel discussion, which we can segue right into if we're ready. And so I would like to go ahead and usher us into it. So for our panel discussion, we will have Dr. Philip Gardner, as well as Pastor Keith Brown, and they will be joined by Reginald Washington, founder and CEO of Project Aware, which is a nonprofit organization here in San Diego that educates at-risk youth and prepares them to become future community leaders by teaching them emotional literacy, social skills, and self-examination. And we also have joining us Bishop Dr. William Benson, who is leader of Total Deliverance Worship Center in San Diego and president of the San Diego chapter of Pastors on Point, an organization comprised of pastors in the city of San Diego of various denominations who are committed to working together to create a better quality of life for their communities and congregants. So we have a wonderful panel of local leaders here, advocates joining us tonight to share their insights and talk more about this issue, how it relates to the communities they serve and the missions that they're on. And as a reminder to our audience, please use the Q&A feature to submit any questions that you may have for our panelists. We will have our curated discussion portion, but afterwards we will be taking your Q&A questions. So first, I would just like to pose to Mr. Washington and Bishop Benson, since Dr. Phil and Pastor Brown were able to speak a little bit more during their pieces. Can you please tell us a bit about yourselves, the work that you do in the community, and what inspired you to be here tonight and join the fight against menthol and other flavored tobacco products?
Mr. Bishop, would you want to go first? Did you want me to say anything?
Go ahead, sir.
All right. Again, thank you, Nicole. I definitely appreciate it. Again, my name is Reginald Washington. And for me, Project Aware is actually an acronym. The acronym for Attitude when Angry and Resolving Emotional Issues, with the key part being nonviolently. Project Aware really focuses on building leaders, because as we understand this fight that we're having right now, it isn't just quote unquote the old folks, as they say. We have young individuals that really need to step up, because they're the one that's really, they're preying on. Unfortunately, we know that the tobacco industry, what they do is they look forward to the next generation that they're targeting. That's why when you saw that piece, you actually saw generations of individuals being targeted. At one point in the 60s, in the 70s, and so on. But now here we are in this new millennium, and you're actually having individuals who are using tobacco to smoke marijuana. And make no mistake about it, these swishers and these backwoods, and you hear these terms, they're actually using that to smoke marijuana. And as we know, marijuana has now become legal in a lot of areas. So you have to understand that the tobacco industry is aware of this as well. So for me, again, it is personal. The unfortunate part for me is I grew up in a household where smoking menthols and Viceroy longs and cools, that was considered normal. I saw that. And I want you to understand that when we see our parents doing something, we think it's okay. And for a lot of us, we want to be like our parents. So I remember those times of watching my mother and my father smoke. And to this day, I thank God that I don't smoke or drink, but I also know that I have a brother who lost his leg. And one of the things that the doctor said is like, you're going to have to stop smoking. And he still hasn't. So what we have to understand that the initial process of smoking is what it is, but there's an addiction aspect to it. Our community is being addicted. So we're trying to stop something, because for a lot of us, the first time they start, it isn't the last one, it's the beginning of a process. And at one point in time, no matter what we say, the addiction is going to actually take over a lot of us. We're predisposed in a lot of areas where we tend to get more addicted than other generations. I was taken, I couldn't believe the statement about, because of the color of our skin, we're able to hold on to nicotine, to someone other of a lighter skin.
That's right.
This type of information, a lot of individuals don't have an understanding of. Now you top that off with the way we're being preyed upon. Man, it's almost like a shark up against a goldfish. Man, the goldfish don't stand a chance.
Yeah, and it is insidious, Reginald.
Yeah, and I apologize, because I get really passionate when I see, right in front of me. And, I've been able to escape these things, but when I have a whole community that as soon as I walk outside and I have my mint teas and they're talking about Black and Miles and they're talking about backwoods, and the only thing I say is, man, you shouldn't do that, because I can't take it out of their hand. but damn it, I can't give them the information. And that's why I'm here today. And that's why I do the work that I do within my community, because make no mistake about it, it's also a mental health aspect to this as well. We talk about the physical health, but you know how many times I've heard youngsters say, man, I just need to take me a smoke break.
Right.
Take a look at this. Take a look at the things that they're saying, and they're indoctrinating other individuals around them. But I don't want to go on too much. I just wanted to bring you sort of insight on what Project Aware does. We build leaders for these type of situations. Not that we win all the battles, but the point is that we're going to stay on the battlefield. And thank you guys for giving me this opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Reggie, you always speak with so much passion. I mean, it's apparent. But I would love to bring Bishop Benson into the conversation. If you could speak a little bit more about what drives you to advocate on this issue.
First of all, I want to thank Mr. Washington for being so courteous, as well as thanking you for allowing me to be a part of such a very important topic now and in the future to come. I am the president of Pastors on Point. I'm the senior pastor of Total Deliverance Worship Center. And some of the things that we've been involved in that we found necessary is working with the National Heart Association, Clean Air Coalition, the Healthy Heart with the county, American Cancer Association, as well as working with the COVID and vaccination process over in District 8. We also are the CEO of Stepping Higher Incorporated, which is a nonprofit that works directly with the county on mental health issues. And so we're trying to, I love Mr. Washington's passion as well. There's so many mental health areas where our people are so stressed. And because we are a stressed people, they know that we look for devices and to be able to wind down, if you will, because a lot of us are not cultured to understand hobbies and other areas where we're able to depress. And so for me to be a part of this as a pastor, a bishop over the areas, my areas are from San Ysidro, of course, to El Centro, over to Moreno Valley, all the way to Anaheim. And so I have about 75 churches under me and the local ecumenical churches here in San Diego. The slide that Dr. Gardner showed us was so wonderful because it showed the transition of generations. As a pastor, we are now doing celebration of life of those individuals who were addicted to nicotine in those 60s and 70s and 80s. Now they are 30s, 40 and 50s. And heart disease has been, and cancer, throat cancer has been on the rise because now these people have turned their lives around. Now they're in church, but the disease has caught up with them. And so it has been a tragic piece to know that they are dying because of a habit that they had early on in life. Even after they have now begun to jog and exercise and eat healthy, as the doctor said, that cancer stayed in their skins. The nicotine stayed in their skins, it stayed in their cells, it stayed in their lungs. And to know if we don't jump on it now, they've made it so tantalizing that when our young people grow up, they've started much, much, much younger because it makes it look so cool. They're going to become a generation that dies off because of something that seemed cool and was easy accessible. They were targeted. And now you want to know why we're only 12% of African Americans nationally. Why? Because they target us at a young age and they never expect us to live past 40. And so our churches, our Black churches are becoming extinct because they're targeting us. So then there'll be no more Black churches because they've targeted us at young ages. And now we don't even get a chance to develop ourselves into citizens. And then when we turn our lives around, we've already poisoned our bodies for the first 30 years. So this is very important to me because I am having more celebration of lives and more deaths and more hospital visits that I would like to mention.
Thank you so much for that, Bishop. I kind of want to continue with that line that you're on and ask you, how do we get this message out better in our Black faith communities about menthol, about how it puts you at higher risk for COVID-19? Like, as one of our leaders in the Black faith community and interfacing with your congregants all the time, knowing them and their needs, what is the best way to get this message to them?
That's a wonderful question, Nicole. I think that this is the start. I am so honored to be a part of this panel. I have been so educated in the last 40 minutes by Dr. Gardner's information that I was totally unaware of. Because of COVID and the vaccinations, the county, the state, and all the physicians found out that there are hundreds of people who go to houses of worship on their own. We don't go out to solicit people. They come to us as the trusted messenger. We have been educated, and I want to thank my colleague, Dr. Brown, as we work together in this fight of COVID and vaccination. And they found out that one of the trusted messages are the pastors and the house of worship. With this information that Dr. Gardner has given us, I think that if we join up together, as you have already made the effort to do, I think that we can partner up, because we baptize these people, we marry these people, we're there when they have their babies. Unfortunately, we're there with them in court. Wherever it is, we are there for them, and they trust us. Now, by educating the pastors and the community leaders, I think that we can take a huge stab at this and really get some home runs by partnering up together.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Pastor Brown, is there any insight that you'd like to share as well as one of our leaders in the faith community?
No, I think Dr. Benson has really hit the nail on the head. Like I said, we, spreading the message, those who come to worship, and of course, COVID has, shut down some of the worship, the fellowship, the in-person worship, and they're starting to come back around. So we've kind of lost some ground on being able to do it. But, COVID testing, vaccines, people are coming to get that. And it's just another place that we can disseminate information. I'm like you, Dr. Benson, this information that Dr. Gardner just shared, I wasn't familiar with some of that. And I know, again, I'll share with you some of the personal stuff that's happened to my family that frustrates me. And the other thing that frustrates me is, and I didn't even tell you some other family members, but it seems like when they try to quit, they can't. And we look at people who do crack cocaine, and that's a bad drug, and heroin and meth. But what about cigarettes? In my opinion, it's worse than them, because I have seen some of those same family members smoke until they died, knowing that they have cancer. They can't stop. So we have, I'm not sure what causes it, but I know that it has to be very, very addictive. And for that, menthol to be the one that they exclude, to me is a very pointed message to our community. So we have to just, try and get that word out. If we can get that information some kind of way, and we can share it with those who are coming to get vaccines and get tests, because that's another group of people that we can touch.
That's wonderful, Pastor. Sorry for interrupting, but first of all, I do want to say, Nicole and everyone else who's listening, is that we got 4 powerful Black men on the screen right here. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud to see you all dealing with this issue from different perspectives. Really interested to see that, and to just reflect that, really the faith-based community has been on the forefront on this COVID fight. And maybe that's a new way that you're going to help serve this community by being even more focused on health issues, and this might be one of them. But just think about that person who says, you know what, it's a free country, I can do what I want, and you're gonna, it's not for you to tell me if I can smoke menthol cigarettes. And that the folks are out there, even though we have all kinds of different types of controls on substances like this. What do you say to those people that say, leave me alone and let me smoke what I want to smoke, and let them target me the way they want to target me? I'm a grown person. Anybody have any comments on that?
I would like to take a shot at that. We deal with that, as you said, Mr. Young, with the COVID piece. When the shots came out, the vaccines as well as in the testing, don't think that the church bought into it. We have religious myths, of the mark of the beast and a chip being put in you. And so we went through all of that. Mm-hmm. But I can't tell you after a while when it started affecting their homes, when it came into their backyards, when it was their uncle, their cousin, their best friends. I can't tell you, and because I am clergy, I can't tell you how many people have come, through the back door asking for a vaccination shot like we was a drug dealer, Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of people who fuss just to fuss and argue just to argue. But I promise you, they get afraid. When you start showing statistics, when you start showing them the facts, when you start presenting it to them and it starts coming to their home, trust me, I still believe the trusted messenger is word of mouth. And when it starts coming into their own circle, I believe that we can win it. I watched COVID. I watched all the people said, I would never get a shot. I would never get it, and advocated. Facebook, Instagram, these very people now have gotten sick and have escaped ventilators. And now they have become advocates. So I believe that we're going to have that opposition, but sometimes that opposition actually becomes the testimony to our issue, because it will end up in their front yard. I promise you.
I want to just bring a little bit of awareness to that too, because Mr. Young, there's no doubt you're going to have individuals that's going to say, hey, I smoke, let me do my own thing. It's my own body. And by all rights, that's true, but that doesn't mean that we don't continue doing the work. Because a lot of the things that we do, even if they don't go by it, at one point, they're going to know that they've gotten this information. So we have to continue having, this message out. But I'll always continue to be this person right here as the individual that's role modeling the behavior. I'm literally live on Facebook and Instagram right now, and individuals are asking me, hey, what is this? Well, you know what? This is an opportunity for you to learn a little bit about what's going on with you. Mm-hmm. So that's how we do that. We can't stop an individual, but we're going to show as hell, continue giving them the information. Now, what they do with it, now that's the part that, we have no say-so over, but our part is we're doing the right thing by giving that message out, because we're leaders. Mm-hmm. And I don't even mean leaders in the community. We might be a leader to our younger brother, our nephew, our family. We're still a leader somewhere to someone. So those individuals who say, let me do what I want to do, great. But hey, I just want to let you know this is what's going on, and these are the challenges that we have in front of us as a community. I think that's one of the things that we have to stay forward and thinking about, just continually role modeling the behavior that we are actually asking of them. That's a big part of who we are. There's not a lot of advocates that's doing the things that they say not to do. So when they see advocates that are actually role modeling the behavior, maybe, just maybe, it might strengthen them or give them some awareness.
Young, let me just maybe add just one little bit a piece on there. How can we can make any headway? It's with collaborations with other organizations. And working together. And I think that's the piece. The message needs to be coming, the same message from different angles. It's great, the faith-based community. We've got other organizations that are involved. I know one organization that I work with is, the Green Foundation. They provide information, and I've known about them because they provided information to our community on different things about cancer and about alternative treatments. And so organizations like that, and then us collaborating together, I think is important. So we get that message out in different venues and different ways and different methods. And again, like you say, Reginald, what they do with it is up to them. But not only getting it out, but when people come back to us, we need to be receptive to them coming back and say, I was wrong. Instead of saying, I told you so, we need to welcome them back in and still help them when they come back.
Yeah, and I would say,
Pastor Brown, I was going to,
go ahead.
no, I was just not only going to agree with you, I just going to offer that we've done, the AATCLC has done this work around the country, and what we have found, and would love to help you do this in San Diego, is we've held series of town halls in different communities where we actually bring community folk together to have this discussion. As you put forward, coalition, there are different groups out there that are prepared to come and hear this. We know that some people want to say it's our cigarette, or as Tony pointed out, you can't tell me what to do. This is my body and all of that. But, as a community, we can have a discussion about that. And I just want to say we're prepared, if you guys would like, to have some town halls around San Diego to have these discussions. I want to thank you guys for your participation here this evening.
This has been a wonderful discussion so far. And I think I kind of want to ask one more question before we segue into the questions we've received in our Q&A chat, and give our panelists an opportunity to answer those live. So, just kind of going off of the dialogue we just had, and also referencing what Dr. Phil said earlier in his presentation, we have opponents to, legislation that would end the sale of menthol cigarettes, saying that doing so would be racist, claiming that Black people wouldn't have access to their preferred flavor of cigarette, but other racial and ethnic groups would, I would want to know from the panelists what your thoughts are on this. And then also, we have the component of the criminalization. We have Black people who are legitimately afraid that, the ending the sale of menthol would put them at risk for arrest and jail time. We know that that's not true, but what would you say to these individuals?
If I can, one of the things that, first of all, these are some excellent questions. Just for someone to think that racism is denying us access to death is somewhat hilarious. However, I would say let the Black people be the one that create their priority list. And, as far as what we call racism, there are so many things that is racist. And I believe that we're in a time where we have joined together with our brown brothers, our Caucasian brothers, our Filipino brothers. We see now that Blacks have been discriminated and targeted. It's videotaped. I believe this Black Lives Matter type of era has brought more people in to say, now I see it. Now I understand it. So I believe that we have other cultures and other races that have come in who have stayed by the sideline because they just didn't understand it. They didn't see it. They didn't witness it. Now it is, as one would say, even Ray Charles can see the racism that has been taking place. So we have gotten stronger now because our other brothers and sisters have joined the fight.
If I could just add something in just before we can. It's funny that question even came up about this is racist because they won't let us. smoke menthol. Make sure that we are very clear on this. The majority of individuals are smoking cigarettes and using menthol. It's not that they have no knowledge. They understand that it's bad and they're making that choice. That's why it's our job to help them take a look at some other choices. I think even the most ardent smoker will realize that this isn't about them being racist towards it. The majority of them understand big tobacco are using them. They're just addicted, and for lack of a better word, they just don't give a damn. And that's where our job comes in, to help them give a damn. And again, I go back to leadership in our communities and in our homes. You know, having and working with young men and young women, and the majority of them smoke, it isn't because they feel they're being preyed on. They're smoking because they're addicted and they feel like that's the end of, I mean, that's actually part of their culture. For young men and women, smoking is part of their culture. We have to change culture. And that's a lot to ask for, but imagine, you know, what we saw and through those through that presentation. They actually added Cool Jazz Festival, a concert, and added tobacco like that's part of the concert. It doesn't have to be part of the concert. You go to a concert now, everyone's getting high and smoking because they believe it's part of the culture. We have to change culture, and it's gonna be, you know, our job to start one person at a time, and that's my personal belief.
And you know what, as I'm thinking about that, the people who are saying that the discrimination is occurring with the predatory marketing. That's the discrimination.
That's, yes,
okay.
Yes.
We got to change our paradigm and perspective on this. That's where the discrimination is. I am purposely and intentionally marketing a product to you that's designed to get you hooked and designed to kill you early. So you want to talk about discriminating, taking that away is not the discrimination. Continuing to allow the big tobacco companies to do this to us, that's discrimination. And it's very clear.
If I can add to that, you are so right, Pastor Brown, that just the marketing is discriminating, because in some of our lower income areas, they sell what they call loosies. And loosies are cigarettes that are broken up from the pack and they are sold individually. So they break it down so low to its lowest common denominator that anybody can smoke. I promise you, they're not selling loosies in Del Mar and La Jolla and Santa Fe and in all our other areas. I promise you, they're not selling those. Matter of fact, they probably need a definition of the word in order to find out if they have them or not. So it's just discriminating how they make it so available for our people to have access at it.
Yeah, and we haven't even started talking about the kids because they want to get them early, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I guess we'll have that. That's part of the discussion, but really not necessarily the on today. So Nicole, did you want to get to some question and answering? I know there's some folks that have submitted some questions.
Yes, we have a couple of questions here. We've provided some brief answers through the Q&A feature, but we want to give our panelists an opportunity to address these live. So we have one question. As the cannabis and vape industries are using the same tactics, how can we combine all three smoking industries into the same legislation?
Well, that's going to be very difficult. Let me just, I saw the question, I was going to write an answer down for it. I think the short answer is, I think this came up in Beverly Hills. We've raised the question of, getting rid of menthol cigarettes. And a council person say, hey, well, why don't we just get rid of all tobacco products? They all bad for you. We said, you're right, but let's take the first step. Let's get the thing that is doing the most damage to the most vulnerable. Let's get flavored cigarettes and menthol cigarettes away from kids and away from poor communities. once we do that, then let's take our next step. I think it's also true, and I think it was pointed out by Reggie in his comments, and I do a whole presentation on this, and I want to give props to the person who asked the question. People aren't just smoking tobacco anymore. People are co-mixing, or what we call dual use, of using marijuana and tobacco together. And let me just suggest that the same chemicals that are in a tobacco leaf are the same chemicals that are in a marijuana leaf. We call it what, a biomass. A biomass, whether it's leaves in the driveway, whether it's a forest fire, whether it's a joint, or whether it's a cigarette, they all produce the same chemicals. Some have active ingredients like THC in marijuana, or nicotine in tobacco, but they essentially are the same thing, and they're not good for you. I think politically, toward the person's question, is we need to have a number of different laws. The way we kind of look at marijuana, the way I look at it, first, it needs to be decriminalized. And then secondly, it needs to be denormalized. Okay. And so I think that's the steps. The thing with tobacco, it's already legal. Now we have to kind of we're kind of trying to cut it back and cut it back. And that's what the whole thing is. And then given the focus on menthol and communities of color, I think we do have to kind of focus on that. So I think it's a proper question, but I think it's a little bit more complicated that we can just all roll it up in one bundle and kind of do that.
Thank you, Dr. Phil. We do have another question from the same individual, actually. Thank you for being so engaged with us this evening. They said the industry uses imagery and cultural references to sell their products. Are there cultural leaders in the Black and Brown community who could help fight that, to show the reality that they are being used by the smoking industry? Well, first and foremost, I would say we have leaders on this call right now who are doing just that. But is there anything else that anyone would like to say in addition?
I think what the person's question is we need to have people that are speaking at a state and citywide and national level that are recognized as leaders that make the front page of the San Diego Union Tribune, or make the front page of the New York Times to do this. And it would be great if we can get Pastor Brown and Bishop Benson and others, and Reggie, to actually become those voices in San Diego. So I think your first response was right, Nicole. I think we have them, and we just have to figure out how to get them out there.
Absolutely. Collaboration is key. Education is key.
And can I say something? And this is going to be difficult for me to speak on right here, you know, and we all have to watch ourselves in certain extent. Because when you were saying that, you know what came to my mind, and you know, I still consider myself young, even though I'm old. I still consider myself young for some reason. And what came to mind was some of my older generation who are community leaders, but they smoke cigarettes. So remember, we're dealing now with a community that also has a sense of shame. They are stand-up community members, but they smoke cigarettes. So they might not feel like, hey, I can't really touch this because I'm one of the ones that they're talking about. So you have to take a look at this from a real, you know, aspect of trauma with this, and living with shame with this. We have some great community members here, but some of them smoke cigarettes. So what happens then? Are they still a voice? Can they still be an advocate?
That just shows all the work that we have to do.
Yes.
That ball's in our court. It's the same thing comes up around, say, well, if you ban menthol in San Diego, they're just going to drive to X, Y, and Z to buy it. And my response to that is, well, that just points out the work we still have to do in X, Y, and Z. Let's not put it on them. To your point, it's on us. We're the ones trying to make this happen. We want the cultural change. So let's try and make that happen. I just also noticed that Linda Barber, and I want to thank her for putting it in the chat. We do combine vape industry into this policy. We work to remove flavored tobacco from all products, including vapes. And that's completely right, Linda. In fact, that's going to be the next hurdle. You notice the FDA the other day said they were going to allow these two new VUs e-cigarettes to be on the market. And they said that 10 other flavored ones weren't. But the key thing is they put, quote, in pending is the question of menthol, because there's people who believe that if we have menthol vapes, that we can eliminate menthol cigarettes and then go to menthol vapes. And it's, you know, it's just getting off one freeway and getting hit by a car on another freeway. And we got to be aware that that's what's coming. I appreciate the comment, Linda, that you put in the chat. And I know we're running late on time. I'm going to let Nicole get to our coalition.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Phil. Thank you to all of our panelists. This has been an amazing discussion. You know, Tony said earlier, we have had the opportunity to hear from 4 powerful, you know, influential Black men tonight about this issue, how it affects our Black community and other vulnerable communities of color. I want to thank you all again for joining us today and dedicating your time to us and this issue and your support. You know, thank you. Thank you so much. I know Bishop Benson, you have another program to get to, so
hey,
thank you
it's
again.
Wednesday Bible study night.
Wednesday Bible study.
All around the city, that's what's happening.
It was Tuesday at my church, but you know, Wednesday.
Hey, I'll just let you know, as a former elected official, hey, that's when you go and say hello to the congregation on that Wednesday Bible study. And I know where the bishop is going, and you all know what I'm talking about. So
we expect your visitations as you've done in the past. We were looking forward for our president of the council to come in, wave hand, kiss babies, and leave and go to the next church.
And listen to a little bit of the words. So
you were one of the officials that I can honestly say stayed and participated with an amen and a hallelujah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So Bishop, I know you got to go, but I would just say, you all, that and all the folks who are listening, is that yes, these are important issues. Clearly, there's passion. There's information, research done on this issue. There are lives that have been affected, and that shows me that creating this new policy at the City Council to eliminate the sale of menthol cigarettes and products, and also flavored products, an ordinance that does that would really reflect the needs and the will of the people who live here in San Diego, especially on behalf of our most vulnerable, our children, and also the people who are targeted, these vulnerable folks who are African Americans, Latinos, who have been targeted by the industry. So there's a push for that, and we are working, our coalition is working hard to ask and insist that the City Council hear what many of the cities throughout the state have done, which is to create that ordinance that allow them first to consider it at the committee level, then go to the council level and have a vote to strengthen these laws related to menthol, related to flavored tobacco products, and also other products that exist in the market that are harmful to our people. So I would just say to people who are listening that we gotta pay attention, join our cause. You will see us in front of council. Hopefully you're along with us, advocating for the council to be able to change, not only here in the city of San Diego, but also in Chula Vista. So that's our goal, and we really need you all to be a part of this. Nicole?
Nicole.
Yes. Sorry, Dr. Phil, were you going to say something else?
I was just going to ask Adrian to say something. So
yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. Adrian, is there anything you would like to add?
Yes, absolutely. Hold on. I want to thank everyone who attended this great webinar this evening. I specifically want to thank Dr. Akilah Weber for her opening comments, and all of our wonderful panelists, Pastor Brown and Bishop Benson, and Original Washington and Dr. Phil Gardner, and of course, Nicole Turkson and Tony Young. I think we all learned a lot about the challenges facing your community, and specifically as we try to enact local ordinances to address this problem. So my name is Adrian Kwiatkowski. I'm the coalition manager for San Diegans versus Big Tobacco. I'm also joined this evening by Aida Castaneda, who's our deputy coalition manager. And we are basically working as a team. Tony Young is one of our team members as well, and our coalition is broad, along with the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council. And we are approaching the City of San Diego and the City of Chula Vista to ask both jurisdictions to end the sale of these products within their boundaries. It's all flavors, all products, all locations, no exceptions. We do this against the backdrop of a statewide law that was passed last year by our friends in Sacramento that enacted a similar type of legislation, but with some loopholes. And the tobacco industry, spent over $20 million during the pandemic and gathered signatures and qualified a referendum. And so that law is now on hold pending a November statewide referendum. It's one of those curious questions where no means yes, yes means no, and the tobacco industry is going to exploit that confusion, and so that's why we are part of a larger effort statewide to have the largest cities in the state of California enact their own ordinances to protect their citizens. And so I'm happy to report that when you look at the largest cities in California, Los Angeles and San Diego are the ones still standing that have not enacted local ordinances. And so we're going to make sure that San Diego is taken off that list and joins other great cities that have taken a leadership role on this, like San Jose and Sacramento and San Francisco and Oakland and Long Beach. And when you join Chula Vista to our local effort, we will have protected more than half of the population of our county, and that's the goal. So I would ask all of you, if you have a moment, to go to our website, sandiegans-bigtobacco.org. You can then send a message to your local council member and our mayor, Todd Gloria, and encourage them to take action on this matter. We're optimistic, as Tony said earlier, that action will be before the city council in the next month or two. We will go through their committee process and then council, and then ultimately the mayor has to either approve or veto the ordinance. But the mayor, when he was in the assembly, was one of the co-authors of the bill I mentioned earlier that's being referendum. So I'm pretty confident he will be supportive of our efforts. So that's pretty much my additional call to action, along with everyone else on this wonderful webinar tonight. So thank you so much for the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you, Adrian, for giving us that summary of what's going on at both the local and the state level. I think the message that we're taking away, along with the knowledge that the Black community and the brown community and our children are being targeted by the industry, is that the fight is continuing. And so as we bring the program to a close, I would just like to share a few things with our audience. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can see these things. First and foremost, this type of community programming that's focused on tobacco would not be complete without directing our participants to cessation resources. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to inform those on the call about Kick It California. And Kick It California is a free program that is funded by our tax dollars that helps Californians to kick smoking, vaping, and smokeless tobacco with the help of proven science-based strategies. Kick It California was formerly known as the California Smokers Helpline, and has recently gone through a rebrand and has improved their services. So if you or a loved one or a community member or a congregant could benefit from the services provided by Kick It California, you can visit their website for more information. I also wanted to take the opportunity to touch upon a funding opportunity that we have going on at the African American Tobacco Control Leadership Council. This is our second round of community engagement awards. And this opportunity is for California-based African American organizations interested in integrating tobacco prevention into their existing work in our communities. So you can be a nonprofit organization that is faith-based or has a health mission or a social justice-based mission. As long as you are serving the African American population, you are eligible to apply. And so the purpose of this opportunity is to award our organizations up to $3,500 for a 3-month contract to increase their capacity to do this type of work in their communities. We really have to get this word out. You have a short span of time before the decision is going to be made at the state level. And we're trying to encourage our local decision makers to do this in our communities, in our smaller communities. So more information on how to apply is included in the participant info packet that will also be sent out in our post-event email. So if any other questions are out there for people or from people who are interested in applying, feel free to reach out to myself at nturksnet.amplify.love.
Real quick, I think I already asked you. I don't want to get. What if I'm not a nonprofit? I'm not able to apply for this?
It is limited to nonprofit organizations.
Okay.
Okay, but we can talk more after the call.
Thank you.
And thank you. Yes, Reggie, you took the words out of my mouth. Thank you again to everybody who was part of putting this program together, for everyone who was here today. Special shout out to Dr. Phil, Tony, Adrian, Ernesta, Aida, our wonderful panelists, Pastor Brown, Bishop Benson. Thank you so much for being here. And to our audience, we do have a short evaluation survey, which you should be directed to as soon as this webinar ends. We would really appreciate your feedback. It helps us to improve the quality of our future programming, making it more relevant and appropriate for you. So if you could just dedicate 3 to 5 minutes of your time, we would really appreciate that. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us this evening. Take care. Have a wonderful night.
Bless you.
Thank you for allowing me to be a part.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you all.